Hello, sleepyheads. It is time for some rest. I hope you get a chance to have a good wind down ritual and ready for some slumber. Thank you for inviting me to usher you into a dreamy slumber. Let's redo this story written by a dear friend of mine, S.J. Pratt. The book is called The 716. It is her first novel, and I'm here to bring chapter 1 today. If you want to find out more about her, it's in the notes. Chapter 1. The Renaissance English Dictionary defined the word as a man or a boy of an unfortunately gainly nature, often scrawny and unattractive. Percentage of muscle mass is typically below 35%. Andy was a tword. He thought of whether the bullies down the road had calculated his muscle mass, but that didn't stop their creative use of the insult. Andy was also a boy of questions. He questioned everything, even it was questionable to do so. It infuriated his mother, who often replied, "Boys shouldn't ask so many questions. You would do well to disavow the unsociable habit." Andy once made a mistake of asking why she spoke as if she were rich and important, when she actually worked at a stationery store. Andy never grew out of being a tword. In fact, he grew more into one, and he never learned when to keep his question to himself. The problem was that he had so many questions. Is it possible to harness energy from a black hole? What would it be like to live on the moon? How much of human history will we find at the bottom of the ocean? What makes glass transparent? He knew these were questions that made him seem odd to other people. But something inside him dreamed of discovery, and he couldn't let it lie. On his 18th birthday, Andy awoke with a wonderful rhetorical question. How comfortable are these blankets? Unfortunately, this was abruptly replaced with a more crucial question. What time is it? His clock, a harsh but ultimately useful present from his sister, answered this by yelling, "It is 6:32 a.m. Your shift starts in 28 minutes, you moron." Andy threw a pillow at his rude clock, then jumped out of the bed and into his waiter's uniform. Andy worked for the Boys Club, an event staffing agency. Grabbing his favorite manatee-themed beanie in case it was cold out, Andy ran downstairs, stopping to smile at the gifts on the kitchen bench. He shoved them into his handbag and poured coffee to go. Raced across the lawn, jumped over one of Mr. Mugridge's cats, and ran to the nearest PART station. His handbag thumped rhythmically against his leg, as if discouraging such disorganization in the future. The part's advertising jingle ran in the head. Public aeronautic rapid trains travel with a twist. Do 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 do. Jogging up the stairs, two at a time, Andy squeezed into the shrinking entrance of the 6:45 a.m. train. The part's takeoff engine kicked in, sending out jolts of energy as the train lifted onto the sky. The compartment buzzed with debates, ranging in quality from Mr. McGridge's new tabby cat to whether Jason Jones looked hotter in tight shirt or shirtless. After scanning his identified and being charged an exorbitant public transport fee, Andy maneuvered between sweaty school kids and ambitious interns to reach a seat at the back. Pulling presents from his handbag, he unwrapped them in turn. The first was a handmade robust padded tube. The card attached read, "To tuck into your boot for pain-free screwdriver storage. With love to my big bro, Lily." The second was from his parents. Andy unfurled a previously owned script and tapped the screen. From scrawny to sexy in under 12 weeks. It had made the Renaissance bestseller list and was life-changing, apparently. The last present was another script, this one brand new. Fundamentals of Anti-Gravitational Mechanics. Aunt Kaylee always got him a text script for his birthday, and as usual, this one was perfect. Andy wanted to flick through and devour every word, but memories of travel sickness warned him against it. So he sat back, sipped lukewarm coffee, and looked out the unclean window as the great nation of Melidora flowed past him. The farmlands, factories, and food trucks of his city, Uruk, gave way to the markets and suburbia of Lower Mistradam. A calm and collected city where one found joy in the holding of a partner's hand and the rediscovery of a favorite shirt behind the washing machine. The part slowed and lowered to a platform, allowing passengers to exit and office workers to board at the first stop. After a few stops in Lower Mistradam, the part sped to Upper Mistradam, where skyscrapers and private pods touted progress and modern technology. Women in crisp suits chatted as they entered banks, museums, and corporations. Flowers grew between buildings, bringing life to an otherwise metallic landscape. A few minutes after they left the last stop in Upper Mistradam, Renaissance burst into view. Outrageous mansions stood on the perfect boulevards, wide avenues touted shops exuding allure, and fine goods and gardens larger than Andy's neighborhood hosted rare trees and hexagonal spa pools. Renaissance is a haven of opportunity, Andy's mother had once said. Her eyes filled with impossible dreams. But Andy saw a city of nepotism and overpriced wine where inhabitants flaunted their charitable natures, taking any opportunity to mention their rise from humble beginnings. In the center of Meliora stood the Tower of Testing, a masterpiece of architecture. It pierced the sky, forest green panes of structural glass flowing up like a stream that defied gravity. Hundreds of girls and their families stood outside of it. Andy sighed. Today was testing day. If he'd been a girl, today would have been his testing day. Instead, he was off to serve mimosas to rich women who had already had 3 too many at his 60th birthday breakfast. Leaning his head on the glass, Andy wondered what it would be like to walk into that tower, to take the real test and find out what he was made of. Whoosh! A private pod flew past the discolored windows. Andy stood up and peered out. Was that a Coverite 4000? Everyone in the part gasped as an exceptionally pink pod took off in the clouds. It soared in the spiral of aeronautic audacity, reminding the plebeians below of the unambiguous link between money and fun before sailing across the top of the part and slowing down to land. The Cavorite 4000 was the private pod, in Andy's opinion. The only 4-seater that could take off 2 seconds after startup, not to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.29 seconds. It hadn't even officially hit the market yet. What Andy would do to get his hand on one, to pull apart his engine to see what made him tick. There was a moment of woos and ahs as the pod landed, leaving Andy with a huge smile and a story to tell. Unfortunately, the story didn't stop there. While the pod glided to a smooth landing in the designated parking area outside the tower, the pod stopped abruptly with such force that Andy was squashed between a pole and several interns, spilling his coffee on his shirt. Great, Andy thought. As parents escorted their daughters off the part and kissed them goodbye, the conductor turned the radio up to an outrageous volume, and children silenced all but their giggling. I'm standing outside of the tower of testing as hundreds of young women gather to take their most important test of their lives. The voice of famous journalist Vicky Verminitrud sounded throughout the part. In case you've been living under a piece of steel, today is testing day. The day thousands of 18-year-old women take the reasoning, empathy, aptitude, and leadership test. The test that cannot be studied for, cannot be cheated on, and whose results cannot be wrong. Today, the next generation will discover what they are made of and what their futures could look like. What's that? Yes. I can confirm that Lim Olivia has arrived. Those still inside the park stuck their sweaty foreheads to the glass like children at the zoo to get a glimpse of the woman stepping out of the Cavorite 4000. She's about to do it, a girl yelled. Lim Olivia is about to take the real test. Lim Olivia, Meliora's darling. She was, according to Lily Elite magazine, and basically everyone Andy had ever met. The most intelligent, beautiful, popular, darling, brave, dreamy woman in the nation. She was everything the future leader of Meliora should be. And she made a fine leader when she took over from her mother one day. Apparently, Olivia had built a laser cutter from scratch, and she once hacked into her mother's personal library, skimming several restricted novels before being caught. Even Andy had to admit she was impressed. Not impressed enough to warrant a flurry of adoration that began as Olivia walked through the crowd. But hold on. Was the conductor getting out of the part? Andy was already late for work. What made him very late was when almost everyone in the park filed onto the street and tried to squeeze their way towards Les Olivia. Eventually, a group of teens made it to the front of the crowd and squealed when she agreed to a selfie with them. A full-grown man fainted when she signed his copy of Elite magazine. It seemed to take forever for everyone to return. But what made Andy extremely late was the park conductor's insistence that everyone should grab some donuts to celebrate the special occasion. What's another 15 minutes after all? It was hell. That's what it was. With his fingers crossed that he wouldn't be fired, Andy trudged across the street to an overwhelmed donut stand. He stood in the sun with a handful of donuts and the refilled coffee, wondering, what if he took the real test? He swallowed, shifted. It was not a question he should ask. But if he were to ask it, very quickly and quietly, could he do it? Would he walk in a boy and come out a man, or would he, as everyone said boys would, crumble under pressure? What if he wasn't like other boys? What if he could score well enough to get into university? He sit in those elegant engineering lecture hall and learn about flight mechanics, thermodynamics, and failure analysis. He wouldn't have to be a waiter anymore. He'd be hired as an engineer to work alongside some of the greatest minds to, can you pull your socks up, please? A tall woman in a neglected dress stared at his legs, her lips forming a thin line of disapproval. I'm sorry? You should be, the woman replied, shaking her head as if his audacity was unbelievable. You wouldn't want your legs to distract the ladies, would you? And you should smile. You almost look handsome if you smile. And he clenched his jaw. He should remain calm, agree with her, do as she was told. He should be mindful of how he would come across when he applied. He didn't want to seem aggressive or argumentative, but sometimes about the situation grated him. This woman, who didn't know him or introduce herself, proudly displaying her own bare legs, was telling him what to do with his body. I doubt my legs have ever distracted anyone, especially given Lim Olivia has done such a thorough job of that already. Besides, if legs were distracting, why do business insist on waiter uniform with shorts? Andy asks, stuffing a donut unceremoniously into his mouth. The woman snorted and muttered something about how boys were raised with such horrid manners these days. She turned and started flirting with the swimming instructor, leaving Andy to his donuts, coffees, and questions. How would real tests work? What kind of questions did they ask? No one knew the answers to those questions, as everyone forgets their real tests. But there was something magical about the idea of sitting the test, even if Andy subsequently forgot its content. What would university be like? Would Professor Payne's teaching style be as captivating as her textbooks? What would it be like to graduate and work as an engineer? That was his dream, sparked by the simple holding of a screwdriver at 4 years old, nestled in the marrow of every bone. It was always on the edge of his thoughts, waiting for any opportunity to bloom. At 7:35 a.m., the conductor thought it was necessary to meander back to the train. Several minutes later, Andy arrived at the rooftop restaurant he was to work at today, and thank goodness his manager was also running late. Securing his apron, and they glanced outside towards the tower of testing and started work with one last agonizing question. Well, one last agonizing question. Why wouldn't he have an achievable dream? That's it for chapter 1. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can find S.J. Pratt's detail in the meeting notes. Rest gently. Be well.